Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. So good to have you join us. For the next 45 minutes or so, we are going to be answering your questions about singing today. The whole show is going to be dedicated to that. Of course, last week we had Marcy Daniels Rosenberg, who is a voice specialist, speech pathologist, and do you know what? I thought it was one of our best shows. If you didn't catch it, I want you to go and have a watch of it after today's show, simply because we talked about SOVTs, semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, and it was just a really practical show. And we do have one super chat from Evo, which we didn't get to answer during the show last week, but I'm going to answer that for Evo right in a moment. Just want to also let you know that next week we have another guest on the show. Dr. Joan Melton will be joining us from New York, and she is a highly regarded voice researcher, and we're going to be talking about the integrated voice, the cohesive voice, and how body, mind, and voice all need to work synergetically. Is that a word? Well, let's run with it. We want the whole system to work in this sort of harmony where, you know, what can happen is when we learn to sing, our whole system can be this sort of independent, codependent system, and we don't want that. We want to have this wonderfully coordinated system of body, mind, and voice. And so we'll talk about that next week with Dr. Joan Melton, and I'm really looking forward to that show. I have Dr. Joan may not remember this actually, but I've actually known Dr. Joan Melton since the year 2000. So we'll talk a bit about that when she comes onto the show. And that'll be exciting. I actually did an add up of how many live shows we've done this year already. This is number 34. Crazy. And Dr. Joan Melton next week will be either our 11th or 12th guest. No, I think she'll be guest 11 for the year. And then we've got even one more guest before the end of the year. Now, the last show, just so you can schedule it in, will be Monday, the 30th of November. And then I'll be taking the December and January period off. And we'll also give Linda, our wonderful moderator, we'll give Linda a bit of a rest also. And then we'll be back on the first Monday of February in the new year, 2021, where we're all hoping that 2021 will be a radically different year to 2020, you know, and yeah, we're all desperately hoping that will be the case, and exciting things will happen in the new year. I'm really looking forward to it. As you know, we have the new Voice Essentials 3 online course is going live December 1st, and so I don't want you to miss out. You can still save some good dollars. For those of you who haven't been able to get a hold of it yet, you can still save 50 Australian dollars off the starting price of that, and we're just putting the finishing touches on that for the 1st of December release. We may get it out early. I don't know. We'll see. At this stage, we're definitely going to be able to launch the 1st of December. We definitely will not miss that launch date, all things being equal. But you never know. What I can tell you is we have managed to release Voice Essentials 1 and Voice Essentials 2 both ahead of schedule, 2 or 3 weeks. And you never know. Voice Essentials 3 might just fall into the same category. Now, as I said before, we're going to be doing Q&A today. And I just want to quickly make a point, because we're gonna answer a super chat that was given during last week. It does feel a bit like last year. Last week's guest show, and what we probably didn't make it clear, and I know many of you watch this live show every week, and I just want to make very clear around the whole super chat and what have you. Firstly, a big thank you to everyone who puts a super chat in. The super chats all of those dollars go back into not only this show, but also the development of new videos, new learning and instructional videos for this channel. And so I want to say a big thank you to everyone who chooses to put a super chat in. When someone does put a super chat in, particularly during the Q&A shows, we prioritize those. If a person puts a question with that super chat, so a super chat, if you're not familiar, a super chat is where you add some dollars to your super chat, and it will register on screen. And when a person puts a question with that super chat, we always prioritize that person's question, because, well, they've put their money where their mouth is, and we want to honor that. During when we have guests, typically we don't have time to get to your questions. Occasionally we do, but generally speaking we don't. And so I try to remember to say to people, look, if you want to throw a super chat in to support the channel, fantastic. However, if you're wanting a question answered, then a super chat's probably, you need to wait until afterwards. And so I can see now actually the Super Kings just throwing a super chat question in, and there it is up on your screen now. And so we'll get to Super King's question in a moment. And then what we do is we prioritize, after super chats, we prioritize the live questions as they're coming in, as they are applicable to the day, and then Linda will have to talk about how we reword this, but I also just want to throw in a third sort of consideration, and that is what I also try to do, and I've never mentioned this before, but I do try to spread the love. So when we do have time to get to non-super chat questions, then I try to spread the love, because a lot of you jump onto the show every week and ask questions every week. And so I do try to spread that around so that there's no one or two or three people over-capitalizing the time. And your enthusiasm is highly appreciated and recognized if you're one of those people that is constantly putting your hands up with a question. But I do try to spread the love a little bit and share that around, because at the end of the day, can I also say, you know, so many of your questions will be answered if you take the Voice Essentials journey with the online courses, or if you choose to have singing lessons with me privately. And then when a person chooses to have singing lessons with me privately, you can go for it, because I am all yours for that 50-minute session, and I get to spend all of my time answering your questions directly. And of course, you can find all of the details for both the online courses and for my private tuition in the description section below. So we're going to come back in a moment. We're going to come back and answer Evo's super chat question from last week. Okay, let's jump into it. So as we've seen, Super King's already got a question in there. We'll get to you in a moment, Super King. So if you hold tight, I do want to recognize Evo's question from last week. And Evo asked last week about SOVTs. Does it focus on any core components? So SOVT, standing for semi-occluded vocal tract exercise, does it focus on any core components of the voice, like twang, etc.? Well, it focuses, when we talk core components, the way I would respond to that, Evo, is it focuses in on breath, pressure, breath flow, and acoustic. So the resonance, the nature of resonance as it travels through the vocal tract. And also the shaping of the vocal tract, which is that semi-occlusion. And so, yes, it does focus in on a lot of those things. And I find one of the key attributes of SOVTs, and to do them well, is more often than not that balance between breath pressure and breath flow. I'm hoping that we get a chance to talk about that variable, that balance, when we have our final guest for the year on the show, Dr. Brian Gill. He'll be joining us. I can't remember the actual date. It's in a few weeks. And so we'll talk about that balance. But I find with SOVTs, that's a key balance that we're always in search for, in really refining. And it's that then has a real influence, a back influence on the oscillation of the vocal folds. One of the reasons why SOVTs are so often, and if you watched last week's show, you'll recall that Marcy was identifying that she uses it often as a therapeutic activity with her patients because of the way it has an impact or an influence on the vocal fold oscillation, and it can bring the vocal folds together in a therapeutic, or I often say like a massaging manner. And so there's a whole range of SOVTs that can be used in that way, and I think one of the key reasons is because of that balance of pressure, often reduced pressure, in turn with a really even flow. So Evo, I hope that answers your question, yeah, let's get to the Super King's super chat. And thanks, Super King. You often put in a super chat, and I really appreciate your support of the channel. Who are your vocal influences in your singing and your vocal pedagogy, and who do you credit as being the most influential, and why? Thank you for the question, Super King. My personal vocal influences, I grew up here in Australia listening to actually I grew up in a highly conservative, highly orthodox Christian house. And so actually for much of my childhood, I wasn't, you may not find this hard to believe, I wasn't allowed to listen to a lot of what was classed as secular music. And in fact, I can still remember my parents having a record cassette burning ceremony when they burnt all of their secular records, and I look back now and I just go, oh. Anyway, consequently, my musical development was somewhat thwarted during what would equate to my late primary school into my early teens. I can go as far back into my early childhood, and I can remember loving things like Elton John, Neil Diamond, the Barbs, Barbara Streisand, the Carpenters. Always loved Karen Carpenter's voice. But as I got a bit older, I really, really enjoyed rock, and someone that really was very much pop rock in Australia was a guy by the name of John Farnham. Growing up was an absolute idol, and then I remember watching, falling in love with Daryl Braithwaite's voice. He's another Aussie icon here, and I saw him on what was back those days called the Midday Show, and he sang. I still remember it. This is crazy because I can't have been any older than 13 or 14 at the time, but I remember being homesick. I would have been sick because my parents didn't let me stay home unless I was absolutely really sick. And I remember watching the midday show, and Daryl Braithwaite came on and sang a song called Pity the Child from the musical Chess, and he nailed it. Like, and that song, I've actually sung that song as a part of my university years. It is a hard song to master, and he just came on and just, like nobody's business, nailed it. And so I've always been super impressed by ones like him. And then get into the 90s, and I love female vocals like Tina Arena. Now, if you're in France, if you're in Australia, you know who Tina Arena is. But if you're also in France, she kind of moved to France in the 2000s. And she's just, I still think she's one of the best female pop voices, pop rock, that probably more pop, that Australia has ever produced. Tina, if you ever watch this, I think you're awesome. Yeah, so there's ones like that. And then, there are people that you would just never hear of. I've got a good friend, Renee Suddy, and I've just got the highest respect for her. If you own any of the Voice Essentials exercise tracks, any of the MP3s, whenever you hear a female voice on that's only one female voice. Her name is Renee, and she is the bomb. I think she's just amazing, an amazing musician, an amazing singer, and an amazing human being. And so they've been my sort of key influences. You've asked why are they my key influences. I think it's listening to the sustainability of that sound. I do like this is just personal. Now, this is not me saying this is what we should all be looking for, but I do really enjoy a forward placement, a focus to the tone, a clean tone that can then be manipulated and managed in accordance to what the singer has determined they want the voice to do. I love the skill around that. I have less time for voices that are very just, open the mouth and hope for the best. I really love listening to singers that have got far more strength, prowess in their craft. So that is, and then my vocal pedagogy, I will just finally answer this, and then we're going to get to some other questions. I've had a number of vocal influences, vocal pedagogies. Vocal pedagogy is sort of the art of teaching voice, for those of you who are wondering. And certainly I've had a number of key influences over the years. A key influence would be Dr. Irene Bartlett, is in my early years. Adele Nisbet at the Queensland Conservatorium, who really opened my eyes to vocal pedagogy. And then actually it's been in joining groups like the Australian National Association for Teachers of Singing, the Australian Voice Association. Joining these groups has really then created connection with even ideas outside of what I was taught was religious, voice religion, don't question. Being caused to question my upbringing, vocal pedagogy-wise, and being caused to really reflect on, well, why do I think that? And, actually, maybe what I was taught back then, maybe it's no longer, maybe research has shown us that we've moved on. This is the key thing, isn't it, around voice, is that our understanding about voice has not suddenly stood still in time. There is this movement in our understanding around voice that empowers us to understand more, and so I hope to never just camp on my laurels and just go, well, there you go, I know it all, and you know, there is just so much that we continue to learn, that I continue to learn, that the world of voice continues to learn, and I would think Adele Nisbet is probably the one I would have to thank for that understanding, because she really encouraged me into groups like ANATs and what have you. So there you go. I hope that's helpful. And then I continue to be influenced by so many great pedagogues, so many of them who we've had come on to the channel, like the Marcy's from last week, where, you know, her book, The Vocal Athlete, has just been, you know, and my learning style is very much reading and research. And so, you know, that's the, you know, I get a lot of my learning from that. So thank you, Super King. David Little, thank you for your super chat. We'll get to your question straight away. You've got a vocal issue where you sing a song out of key or lower than I intend to. How can that be fixed, or any tips for fixing that issue? Yeah, you know, David, it's something that I deal with a little bit, and particularly when I have students come into the studio, and I have my studio space has been closed since March. It'd have to be late March of this year due to COVID. But of course, I am very much hoping that I can, and I have every intention of reopening the studio space in January of next year, 2021, which will be so good to have students come back and join me in person, because everyone that I teach currently is all online, and so that's a thing. So when I have students, I can't do this online, but, well, I can sort of do it online, but when I have students in studio with me, I find that what helps with that, David, is when a student's struggling to, and I find this more so with men, actually, that often we've firstly got to find a real, and it's often only the space of 2 or 3 tones. It's not a big space. We've first got to find a really super comfortable space for the voice. Then sometimes what I find is that I actually, if I sing with the student, if I sing up an octave, then often that will drag the voice for that singer that I'm working with up onto the correct note in the octave that they're supposed to be singing on. There seems to be a bit of a oral phenomena going on there that I honestly don't know what that is, but I have noted over the years that that really helps, and I'm much quicker these days to identify that with a new student and implement that little hack to help them find the right key. Often, though, can I also say one of the things that then often leads a student to struggle with the right notes and where to sit and whatever, when it comes particularly to singing a song, more often than not, it's simply because the song is not in a good key for that singer. And so often adjusting the key, and for guys, more often than not, David, that will mean taking it down 1.5 to 2 tones, so that's 3 to 4 steps, just to help the voice sit more comfortably. And when we do that, what often happens, particularly for beginner singers, is because their musculature, releases some of the tension that it's sort of found itself applying just purely because it's all tense to try and get up to the note, that can also help. So that's a pretty, it would appear quite a simple fix, but more often than not, the simple fixes are the best because they're easy enough to do, and if you're using a backing track, you can just find a piece of software, and they're readily available now. You can find a piece of software to bring them down and change keys, even change the pace of songs. So you might like to try that if that's helpful. Okay, jumping over here, and I'm going to go to Jackie Miller's question. When I sing, I can drink tons of water, but sometimes I think my nerves on stage will make my voice sound rough for a note. It's not cracking, it's like my voice goes dry due to nerves. Yeah, adrenaline for some people, like if you've got heightened adrenaline, Jackie, due to nerves, that can be a rather drying thing for the voice. What you can do is to sort of generate a bit more mucosa or saliva response, is place the sides of your tongue between your teeth, between your upper and lower molars, and bite down for 10 seconds as hard as you're able to without really hurting. But it's got to be hard enough. That will stimulate, you could try it even now, that will stimulate the saliva glands. For most people it will do this, and then you'll get a burst of saliva, which, you know, is helpful for lubricating everything as well. But as far as your hydration, remembering that hydration, it is important. I encourage students to take water onto stage with them, but more importantly, it's important to have your hydration throughout a day, that you get your body up to a sustained hydration level. And really, if you can be drinking 2 to 3 litres of water a day, you know, I've got my water bottle just sitting here, and you just sip that 2 to 3 waters over a day, every day of your life, that is generally sufficient. Now, of course, things change if you're, you know, doing yard work like I was on the weekend and you're out in the sun, or if you're, you know, doing athletic activity. If you're pregnant, often we need a bit more water when we're pregnant. Not when I'm pregnant. I've never been pregnant, but you get my point. And so there are times when we do need more water. But certainly 2 to 3 is your really happy average for most people. And we're also getting some of our moisture content from the foods that we, you know, fruits and vegetables, and so from the foods that we eat, and also other beverages as well. It's not only unadulterated H2O that we need, but I do encourage singers to get into the habit where they can of just going straight for the clear stuff, the water. I hope that's helpful. Raul, hey Dr. Dan, when I try to sing low pitch, I am unable to transform my voice into fry mode. Even if I try to sing low pitch in vocal fry, it will be out of tune. Let me read that again. When I try to sing low pitch, I'm unable to transform my voice into fry mode. Even if I try to sing low pitch in vocal fry, it will be out of tune. Well, partly because vocal fry just gets your vocal folds down into a pulsing, almost non-tonal space. So, given that it's often non-tonal, Raul, it more often than not is not. It's not pitched. So I'd probably have to sort of hear what you're doing there and understand why you're doing it. Typically, we use vocal fry more as a vocal effect than we do for, you know, any pitch related activity. So we use it in, certainly my definition of vocal fry, we use it in things like onsets and offsets, and so it's more to do with your phrasing and your styling than it is to do with pitch and tone. So yeah, I'd need to see what you're talking about there. Mackenzie, I'll come back up to your question here. I have to sing an operatic high note for a virtual musical I'm in. How do I sing a high note with vibrato without sounding screechy? Oh, well, firstly, I'm not a classical singing teacher, Mackenzie. I'm a contemporary singing teacher, and so operatic high notes are not my bag typically. But you know, it may well be that particular note is sort of outside of the current jurisdiction of your vocal capacities when it comes to vocal range. I would probably have to hear what you're doing and see what you're doing. The key to singing really good high notes, everyone focuses in on the singular moment in time of the high note, that single note, where it's actually just as effective to focus in on the penultimate notes, the lead up to it, and not only the notes, but also the vowels and the consonants, they play a role as well, that you're singing on those penultimate notes, because it's often in the shaping of those notes and where we place them in the position and the breath flow that is then going to affect that apex note. And I've got one of my oldest videos, and you can go searching for this on the channel. One of my oldest videos, I talk about the illustration of, you know, a pole vaulter, and they run up the track and with their pole, and they'll often tell you and you'll see sometimes they'll pull out of the jump, and that's because in the lead up to the jump, they almost know, you know, whether they're going to get up, even just to get to that point where, you know, clearing the bar is another question, but, you know, they'll know on their way up on the pole whether it's a good leap up or not. And so because it's in the run-up that they establish the right trajectory to go over the bar. And it's not dissimilar for us as singers. It's often the lead-up, the run-up to that top note that determines whether we're going to get up there. Dust Composer. That's a cool name. Hi, Dr. Dan. What does it mean by curbing and overdrive vocal mode from CVT? Dust, I haven't done, I mean, I'm very aware of Catherine Sutherland and her complete vocal technique, which is what CVT stand for. My understanding is that she has 4 vocal modes from memory, 2 of which are the curbing and the overdrive. That's as much as I know, to be honest with you. I haven't actually done any deep dive into the CVT vocal modes, and so I can't give a highly qualified version of that. I know that for some people the term overdrive represents a pressed phonation where we increase the pressure and hold back the flow, and that's that pressure to flow ratio that I was discussing a bit earlier, which we hope to talk a bit more with Professor Brian Gill about. And so, actually, Dust, what you might like to do, keep an eye out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and also hit the white bell icon so you get the notifications for this show. Because when we have Professor Brian Gill on, that would be a great question to ask him and to see if he's done any work into the CVT vocal modes. Bartek, which has been a little while since we've answered one of Bartek's questions. Can you sing polyphonic overtones? Well, this is going to be an easy question to answer, Bartek. Not intentionally. I have on occasion had it happen, but it was very random and haphazard, and so I cannot demonstrate some for you. Is there any way to practice that technique? I believe there are ways for you to go about, you know, exploring those sorts of sounds. There's almost certainly videos about how to do it on YouTube, but it's not an area that I've done a lot of, you know, even playing in myself. And so I can't demonstrate that for you, I'm afraid, Bartek. Catulo Axel. Hey doctor, I'm Brazilian. Good to have you join us. I only want to know how to start voice training in order to sing in my church. My best advice is for you to enroll in the Voice Essentials online singing courses. There are 3, the beginner, the intermediate, and the advanced. You can get it as a pro bundle where you get the whole lot at the moment for an incredibly cheap price. So just check out the links in the description section below and you'll be able to go and check that out. I happen to know that it is perfect for the church singer. It's perfect for every singer, but church singers, because actually my background is church singing. So, part of my background, I've done a lot of things vocally over the years. How are we going for time? Okay, so yeah, Catulo. I encourage you to go and check that out. Eddie1, hi, I have a question. I'm glad you do, Eddie. I don't know why, but when it comes to singing the verses, I sound kind of bad, but when I do the chorus, it sounds good. Any tips or reasons? I've been singing for a month now. Well, straight up, there's part of your answer is in what you've just said at the very end there, and that is you've only been singing for a month. It takes time, Eddie. You know, I don't have a magic wand. I think some students rock up to my lessons expecting me to own a magic wand where I just magically wave the wand and hey presto, after 2 or 3 lessons they're wonderful. I don't own one of those, and can I tell you, no one does. This singing thing takes time. If I did own a magic wand, what I would be seeking to grant every person that comes into my studio would be patience. You know, it takes time. So I encourage you, Eddie, you are at the very beginning of a wonderfully long, highly rewarding, at times incredibly challenging, sometimes frustrating, but sometimes just so joyful experience of learning to sing. And so I encourage you, just keep putting one step out in front of another. Now, when it comes to seeing your verses improve next to your choruses, sometimes one of the reasons why the chorus goes so well is because that's often where the hook of the song lies, and so it's a melodic structural thing that, you know, really good songwriters, they write a great hook, and that's the stuff that you walk away after you've heard it on the radio or on Spotify, and that's the bit you remember. And that sort of etches and burns into your memory, and so your voice is able to traverse what is more often than not, for a hook to be really great, it doesn't just have to sound great, it has to be highly singable. And so what happens is a lot of people who don't even classify themselves as singers, they'll be able to accurately replicate the melody of that hook, because that's what it's designed to do. It's hooking you. It hooks your ear, it hooks your voice, and that's why we love them. When we then get to the verses, sometimes the verses don't have hooks that are as memorable. And so our voice has to learn to navigate less singable melodic lines than the hook. It's not to say they're not singable. Some of my favorite things to sing are found in verses of songs. But you get my point, right? It's all about, you know, and you could wonder, well, why doesn't a good songwriter just write a whole song that's just hook beginning to end? Well, then you'd have no landscape to the song. A song in and of itself is a journey. It's it takes the listener from the beginning of a concept and and concludes at the end, and it has these parts, and sometimes it has verses, sometimes it has choruses, sometimes it has a bridge, sometimes it has a coda. It's a whole range of structural elements that can go into songwriting. But that may well be one of the reasons why you're struggling with the verses, is that you've got to spend a little bit more time listening. Can I really encourage all of us to, when singing is not just about the doing. And, you know, singing and learning actually is more about the listening and hearing and digesting than it is about the doing, the outworking, the replicating. And I encourage you, if you are wanting to sing, if you're wanting to learn to sing, spend more time listening than you do doing. That's really important. And particularly if you want to really get into the specific nitty-gritty of particular genres. And you need to be spending a lot of time listening to that genre, listening to not only the key people within that genre. So let's say, you know, let's just say it was, I don't know, let's just say it was rock. Well, you'd go searching for really key contributors to rock, and I mean there are plenty of those, so we won't. There's no need to mention names, other than I would also then encourage you to go looking for outliers. Who are some people that are experimenting in the world of rock? Who are some of the new players in the world of rock? Because rock is not dead. It was massive in the 80s, but it continues to play a role in the listening landscape. So there you go. We're going to do one more question. Only one. No more super chats unless all you want to do is contribute to the channel. Yeah, one more question, because I've got a new student starting in about 15 minutes, and I need to do some prep work for them. So we're getting to, where was I? Pedro de Souza. Are there legitimate methods for doing warm-ups quietly? For example, doing sirens in a yawn. Of course there are legitimate methods for doing warm-ups quietly, in the sense that there are a number of ways. We have a saying here in Australia. It's probably a rather uncouth saying, and that is there's more than one way to skin a cat. None of us should be skinning cats. As a cat lover, and I don't know where my cat is currently. She often sits over on the chair over there. I do not advocate for the skinning of cats. It's a figurative turn of phrase. But the point being is, you know, or maybe a better way. Maybe a better way to say it is all roads lead to Rome. And that is, there are different approaches, you know, that will work well, equally well. You know, there's not only one way to do certain tasks. Sometimes there are multiple, as effective as each other, ways to do things. And so there are many different ways to do warm-ups. I'm releasing 6 new videos in January this year that are purely focused on warm-ups with no instruction. It's just going to be the tracks, and you play it from the beginning to the end, do the warm-up, and that'll be done. You're welcome. And you know, and that'll be great. But I'm not putting that up onto YouTube for you to use because it's the only one. That would be incredibly arrogant and narcissistic for me to think that, and thus I don't. But it'll be one way of many. Now, when it comes to doing it, whether you should do it loudly or quietly, I would be more given to doing it in a balanced way, so that you are doing your warm-ups with balance. I like to see vocal warm-ups done in a quiet space so that you're not competing with surrounding sound. I like to see your warm-ups done in a manner that takes a voice from a standing start and slowly but surely stretches the musculature so that blood flow starts to activate throughout the muscles, and you can then stretch the voice out over a 10 to 15 minute period of time. That's what I like to see. But as far as, you know, whether you should do them quietly, well, I think you start them in a balanced manner and you can slowly but surely build that up over time. Okay, I think that's sort of answered our questions. I'm just getting myself together here. We covered some good ground today, everyone. Thank you. There's a whole heap of questions there, like, I don't know, how many questions did we not get to? Oh dear, wowzers. They're wow. Okay, there's nearly 20 questions that we didn't get to today. Thank you for chiming in. Thank you for throwing your questions in. I apologize that we didn't get to them all. I can't answer all that questions in the space of 45 minutes. And so, yeah, but thanks for tuning in. And we do this show every Monday, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And as Terry of Scuba Girls of Georgia has noted, if you're in the US, then daylight saving might be an issue. Hey, Terry. I'm laughing with you, Terry, not at you. And so, you know, make sure you check that out. But here in Australia, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and we do it every week. Next week, we've got a guest, Dr. Joan Melton. I hope you'll tune in. I've enjoyed our hangout today. I hope you'll join me again next week when, as you all know, I generally will finish each show by saying, I'm Dr. Dan, sing well.